strange reason. And I
But anywho, House Bill 479 is, probably about a 6-page document regarding a bunch of things, various things. And in the middle of it, there is a part that says, notwithstanding, this is under the Attorney General's power statute. It's KRS 15.240, and it is to be amended as follows. Notwithstanding any other provision of law to the contrary, the Attorney General shall have authority to initiate actions or intervene in actions pursuant to the provisions of KRS, and it has a bunch of chapters and statute numbers. So upon first glance here, you're not really going to notice it, right? And so, but if you look closer, it includes the whole slew of KRS 525 statutes regarding basically all of the rioting laws that LMPD would use against the protesters over the last year. And so, just rioting, all the different rioting statutes are there. So basically what this means is the Attorney General now has the power to prosecute cases under those charges, which generally tend to be protest charges, protest-related charges, even if the local prosecutor decides that they're not going to do it. And so if you think back to everything that's happened over the course of the last year, you know about the court system and all the protest cases, and I've been working pro bono to help protesters all this time, so I do know these cases. All of those statutes that the Attorney General now has the ability to intervene in charges of, regardless of the local prosecutor's decision. Those are all the charges.
Dave appears to be breaking up just a little bit.
Yeah, and I'm having some audio issues.
You are?
Yeah, I don't know.
Here it says he's having some audio issues too. Interesting. Dave may have to drop out and come back in. It's too bad because it's such an interesting conversation. I hate to just hang in there for a second, you guys. Yeah, he dropped out. He's going to come back, I think. Somebody named Tara or Tara Begley is on my live. That's interesting because it's my first name and the last name of someone I used to know, which is pretty funny. Well, we're still sitting here waiting until Dave comes back in. So let me check the room and see if he's Let me see if he is in the room. No, we've got just us. So he's got to probably drop back out and come in.
Technical difficulties, everyone.
Hey, that's all right. It's worth it when you've got an interesting guest who can talk about stuff. Sometimes it's just a little bit of an unstable internet connection. And of all things, it's turned out that when it rains, cellular service as well as internet connections actually are affected, which just is ridiculous when you stop and think about it, but nonetheless.
Yeah.
How do you say it?
Again, for everyone that is watching, once Dave gets back in, we're going to be discussing HR 146 and HR 479. They are going to be changing some of the authorities for some of the figures that may have authority over pro tem.
Okay, he's back.
I'm sorry, I don't know what's going on over here with the internet connection.
That's okay, Dave.
But anywho, to make the long story short, and keep everybody's attention, this House bill gives the Attorney General the power to come in and take over on cases where the prosecutors dismissed them, and the prosecutors have overwhelmingly dismissed all these protest cases over the last year, right? So what I'm interested in hearing is like the minutes or the floor vote discussion, and exactly how this came about, because it's my theory that this is just some sort of retribution against the BLM protesters, by just giving the power to the exact same person they're protesting, right? They don't like nobody likes Attorney General Cameron. Not around here, not in Louisville anyway. It's surely the protesters don't. The BLM protesters don't like him. And so what the legislature is trying to do here is say, I don't know what it is. It's probably a bunch of, old white men over there, and they're just hearing all these stories about what's going on in the city. I mean, because these words as written, you would just pass right over them and not even know what they were, because it's just a bunch of numbers. And so, they're just trying to slip this in here. What I think they're trying to do is just slip this in here so, the Attorney General, because they're upset because local prosecutors dismiss the cases, so many cases. There was actually a news article in the New York Times a few months ago about Louisville prosecutors dismissing cases. They've been dismissing these cases. So now Attorney General, and specifically Attorney General Cameron, has the power to chill the very speech that's used against him. And I really don't think if the protesters know what's going on here, I'd be upset about it, because how LMPD does things around here. There's one set of rules, for the white protesters, and then there's one set of rules for everybody else. And so when you get even in Frankfurt, when those protesters invaded, the governor's home, nothing happened. Nothing happened. Nothing. And in our city, if that would have happened, there would have been mass arrests. There would have been, paddy wagons galore. Everybody'd be there. Everybody's going to jail. And so,
You're, of course, referring to the people who hung Governor Bashir in effigy and pounded on the mansion's door.
Exactly. And went in the Capitol with guns drawn and all that. In our Capitol, in Frankfurt, not the U.S. Capitol. But so I don't know. I think this is just a spit in the face. Plus, he's the Attorney General. He already has all kinds of power. Why does he need to come meddle? In the county or whatever, each individual county. You know which county is going to get singled out? I bet you can guess. And so, they basically just said to spit in the protesters' face and say, here, well, you know what? We're just going to give more power. Since your prosecutors are dismissing the cases, we're just going to give more power to the Attorney General, the very person that is the subject of so much protest, of their protest. So, you guys need to all the protesters need to call the legislator, the people in Louisville who, support the right to protest. They need to call. I mean, and, there's a whole other aspect to the law, too, because, when you make a law, you're putting a norm out into society. And basically what the norm says is that even if your law enforcement is incorrect, even if your local prosecutor knows the police officer is incorrect, the Attorney General can still come in and take over the case. And, I just think that it's just wrong. And they're just, it's just like, but, on the other hand, once the protesters understand this is what's going on, some of them might feel like they had their speech chilled. Like, oh shit, even if the prosecutors dismiss this bogus protest case, I still got to worry about the Attorney General coming in here and opening or continuing the case without the local prosecutor. So I mean, it's chilling speech, depending on how it's applied. But the law is written, the words are neutral. But is the world neutral? I don't think so.
No, and law
is context into it.
Law is open to interpretation, just as the Constitution is open to interpretation. So
that's why I want to hear the floor vote on this 479. I want to hear what these legislators have to say and what exactly they're talking about. I want to hear that.
Right.
I think everybody should listen to that, especially if you're a protester. No matter if you're right or left, you need to listen to that. Because that overall is it seems like an attack on the First Amendment, which, we all have to value, regardless of which side you're on.
And I don't know if the Kentucky General Assembly has come into the 21st century like Louisville Metro Council has, but, up until last session, they were simply recording it, and then KET was showing the committee meetings the next day. Now, Metro Council, to their credit, has been live streaming most of this year. So we can see what decisions are being made on a local level as they're happening.
I think KET, I think you're right, though. I think KET will probably show that. It's more of we're living through such crazy times. These politicians have the advantage of slipping laws through, and you would never know it until it's too late. I just found out about this a couple days ago. It's 479.
Well, the biggest concern that I always have is that people won't know about it till it's done, and whether it's given plenty of advance notice or not. The fact is, if they don't start live streaming proceedings, we will forever be at a disadvantage. So I just encourage my friends who actually are in the House and Senate to start working on leadership to get that done. Let's look at House Bill 164, Dave. By the way, for those of you just tuning in, this is Attorney Dave Johnson, who wanted to speak with Jared and me and anyone else who wanted to hear about House Bills 479 and 164. Oh no, I think he's frozen again. Or else he just has a look of shock on his face. I'm not sure which it is. Yeah, he's frozen.
Yeah. Well, just to kind of recap a little bit of what Dave was touching on, basically, House Bill 479 has been passed. It was voted on and passed. Governor Beshear, I believe, can now veto. That is the only last option for it to not be written into law. But this HR, this House, or this HB, sorry, this House bill essentially gives the Attorney General the authority to prosecute if local authority does not. And the fear that we have is that that could potentially be easily misused to bring charges on the protest community. So that's kind of what we were talking about with 479. We'll give Dave a few minutes to see if he can get back in on the live, and then we'll kind of touch on 164, which is a whole other goose egg altogether.
He's trying to come back in. Hang on one second. I will admit him to the room.
Thank you.
You are more than welcome. It says 2 people entered the waiting room. Let's see who the other people are. Oh, it's both Dave Johnsons.
Maybe one of them. Maybe he's trying his phone on one of them.
Yeah, I think he's doing it on both just for fun. There he is. You're back. He's coming in with his audio.
Yeah, you know what? I'm not going to use that stupid laptop. I'm on my phone now.
Oh, that's probably a good idea. So let me clarify one thing, Dave. Did House Bill 479 pass out of committee, or did it pass out of the legislature? I can't believe it's made it through all of the House and Senate yet.
It hasn't, because it was just introduced on. Let me look here. It was just introduced on. Not too long ago here. It's in here somewhere.
We kind of found out about all of this today, so Dave kind of had to scrape together some resources and do some research real quick.
I had to get all that stuff together. It was posted in committee 2 days ago, and it went through committee today. It was introduced in the House committee on 2/10/21. So it's in the beginning of the process, so it can still be
right.
Still express your opinion, right?
Right. It passed out of committee today, but it has not passed through either chamber of the government, and it has not yet gone to the governor yet. So I just wanted to clarify that, because we were talking about that earlier.
It has to get through both chambers, and and the governor. The governor can veto it.
And hopefully it won't. Hopefully it won't get through both chambers. But since we have both houses are dominated by the Republican Party, there's a very good chance of it happening. Yes. So let's while you're not frozen, let's get you while you're still living and breathing. Let's go on to our next bill.
Okay. The other issue here, I picked these bills out because they directly relate to protest activity.
Yes.
Maybe not in the language, but, of course, as applied. And that counts, too. When the police, apply something the wrong way, that's unconstitutional. And that can be, like, not providing equal protection, like applying it hardcore on the little BLM protesters and then not applying it to, say, the other protesters we were talking about earlier that, trespass on the governor's mansion and all that stuff. But anyway, this is House Bill 164. It has, as far as I can tell, it has just been introduced. It was introduced in the House on 105/21, which is very interesting. If you remember, the U.S. Capitol insurrection happened on January 6th. There is a lot going on in here. This is basically a criminal bill. And at first glance, you go through it and it's like, it's talking about assault, blah, 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 blah. But as usual, somewhere buried in here, there is protest-related criminal statute amendments. some get what they want, right? They don't have any need to keep going. They just pass through. So this just looks like targeting, straight up BLM protesters. Again, the rioting statutes. There's also some stuff in here. It's like they turned camping on the Commonwealth property. They want to turn that into a felony. If you do a little bit of math in your head or logic, you'll know that what they're trying to get at is either protesters camping at the square or the homeless. So basically, if you're camping, by the definition, which is pretty easy, if you're like stay somewhere from 10 o'clock in the morning till 6 o'clock, or 10 o'clock at night till 6 o'clock in the morning or so, you can get arrested and charged with a felony case. So this is troublesome on a few levels. Also, a lot of the same statutes that we were just talking about, in which the Attorney General would have power under Bill 479, are in this one too, in the middle, relating to rioting charges. And again, these are the same charges that were used in all the bogus cases against the protesters over the last year by LMPD. 525-020, 525-030, 525-040. They're all like just ambiguous rioting charges, statutes. Anyway, they have made conviction of these they want to have mandatory jail sentences, like 30 days, 45 days. Again, what this looks like is the legislator is picking on Louisville and trying to bully the protesters and chill their expression once again, because some of these are, obstruction of a highway. We saw that in Nulu, right? And I got protesters that were in Nulu as clients. I know what happened there. And everybody got charged with obstructing the highway. Well, in this bill, they want to make obstructing a highway a felony. And that's right after, that's right after all the rioting statutes. So like, it's kind of neutral language again, but the only people, if they're trying to do this 6 to 7 months, or almost a year after the protest started, that continued for over 200 days, that's what the focus is here. The focus is Louisville and the protesters and the homeless and the camp and the camps and the square and, not obstructing the highway. And then, if you're caught for some of this stuff, like if they determine that you interrupted or trespassed or got involved in some sort of government meeting somehow, it's just, oh man, it's so much in here. I think that everyone should read this top to bottom. It is 9 pages, but the most troubling parts that I see are start on page 4 and go all the way to the end.
Well, too, Dave, when you're looking at the summary and it talks about the trespass, criminal trespass becomes a Class D felony when done to harass a person who is a law enforcement officer, active duty member of the military, judge or elected or appointed government official. That's pretty much anybody that you run into in a protest environment.
You're exactly right. That's what I'm saying. It's like everybody take time to read this, because this is just all out attack on Louisville. That's all this is. This whole thing. The whole thing. Like, there's so much in here, I don't even know where to start. It's like, but again, it's all neutrally written, right? We could apply this in real life to those guys, like we keep talking about at the governor's mansion, right? The effigy and all that stuff. We can apply that to them, and we can apply this to the U.S. Capitol insurrection. But you know what? Those things don't happen very often. They're not like, they're not, and the language is neutral. But unless you put the context into it, it doesn't, it really doesn't dawn on you exactly what's going on here. But where else do people really protest in Kentucky? but some in Lexington, some in other places, but it happens predominantly here. And it just so happens that right after they go on about all the rioting and upping the penalties and everything else, obstructing a highway, they go straight into like no camping. So basically, like, a person is guilty of unlawful camping on property owned by the Commonwealth when he or she knowingly camps on an area which is not specifically designated for use as a camping area by the department or agency responsible for the land. So, like,
see, that's one of the things that concerns me most is even protest aside, like, not even talking about the protesters, like that in and of itself. Yeah, like, think about people that might end up camping in like Cherokee Park or something like that.
You're criminalizing the homeless. This is so bad. I mean, I can't, and it comes right after the protest part, right? So, I mean, I can't help but think that this is just basically a statute amendment aimed at Jefferson Square. That's what I think this is. Every which way I look at it, I'm like, this is, I mean, and it has other effects too by, getting other homeless camps and stuff. But I mean, if you look at it as a whole, the whole amendment and the time era that we are in and everything that's going on, the Kentucky legislature is like, man, you BLM protesters, y'all need to stop. Well, we're trying to stop you. And look at all this trouble you're going to get into. You're going to get felony charges for obstructing a highway and protest. You're going to get like a felony for camping out in the park. You're going to get like, I mean, this is just horrible.
Right. Like we know that it's a known tactic by law enforcement and judicial system to basically push court dates and then try to compound charges over time so that, it's people from going back out.
It chills their feet.
So yeah, like it kind of looks like this new House bill that they're trying to pass is just kind of adding on top of that, making it easier for them to just like compound more and more charges and increase charges.
Well, what I would like to say is the way the legislator is going to write it, it's going to seem neutral. But the problem is we all know that in the hands of LMPD, this turns into something else. This whole, these 4 pages, turn into something completely different because we know they've been charging people with the rioting stuff. We know the prosecutors are dropping it. And it's just like they're just trying to scare you, just trying to shut you up. Read the 2 bills that I just talked about together. That's a hell of a chill on speech. That is borderline First Amendment offensive. Like, it's out of control. It's like trying to chill the speech in the abstract with neutral language. And that's the game with the First Amendment. That's how you game the First Amendment. But you have to be careful not to create ambiguity either, because that's unconstitutional as well. And you got to not try and stop the press. That's really special. Yeah. Now, if a press person was able to read this and find that this might harm them somehow, especially considering the history of LMPD and the protests, they may be able to make a preemptive challenge against this statute. Like, just stop it immediately. Like, before it even starts. Like, hold it up in federal court. Right. So both the First Amendment problem for the press. If the press tend to get sucked into all of LMPD's, madness, malicious prosecution, and brutality, this can be a big old constitutional mess. Because the cops don't learn, the Constitution like I did. They don't know that. They don't know how to like put this stuff into play.
Well, one of the things that I've observed that has been disturbing to me is the lack of ability to actually quote the law when asked what charges are being placed upon someone who's being arrested. And I've seen, episode after episode after episode of that in the coverage of the protests is just having these charges made really, in some regards, very, very willy-nilly, and then not being able to express and explain why it is that those charges are being leveled. And that's why we have three branches of government, and the judicial branch's job is to interpret the law and to, figure out what applies to the charges that are being placed. So there's a far different, interpretation of law for a felony riot for standing on the sidewalk live streaming. Yes. And a misdemeanor for not obeying an officer's order to disperse. There's a significant difference there.
The problem here is not necessarily these new amendments and bills as they are written. The problem is how they may be applied.
That's right.
The problem stems from our knowledge, my personal knowledge, that all of these rioting charges are what the LMPD used to lock people up. And yeah, they may eventually get out, or they may eventually not catch any convictions or whatever. But it's a hell of a burden to go to jail and pay, and have to pay a lawyer. I'm well aware of that.
And have to pay a lawyer, and to have to go through the crap that you go through when you miss work, and when you have to have your kids taken care of, and
that's silencing you already. But on top of that,
very challenging.
All this other stuff that comes out in one House bill, like 4 pages. And if you read it, every single word all together, and understand what's going on, you can see that is a Kentucky legislative attack on our city and how we do things here. And what they just don't like it. And they want to, I don't know. They just keep giving power to the wrong people, and all it does is fuel more protests. You're going to give the AG the power to go after people who are protesting him, even if a prosecutor who knows their job probably better than an AG Cameron decides that no, this is bullshit, and throws it out of the system, so we all don't have to pay for it and the courts don't get overloaded. Well, this is all just a big thing, a big scam to try and silence the protests here. I know that's what this is. And I'm interested in hearing these floor discussions when the chambers vote here, because I want to hear what they have to say. I want to hear how many times they say Louisville. I want to hear how many times they say Black Lives Matter protesters. I want to hear this stuff, because once I hear that, then you have a background to actually use it against them in court. But they'll probably be quiet about it. But somebody could slip, because it would show the intentions of that law being malicious or unequal. And
hopefully KET will be live on those floor debates, Dave. That's my hope, because they do often have the capability of putting those things on, and we will be able to see them live. So
everybody should get loud on this one, especially the Louisville protesters. Both of these House bills, they need to be exposed. I'm definitely going to write something for the Riot Hard page and put a few diagrams and the statutes out there, so that everybody can see exactly what we're talking about.
Yeah.
I just haven't got a chance to do that yet. And
real quick, I just want to point out to everybody, at least that's watching my stream, there's a phone number listed at the bottom. Call to oppose these bills. Both can still be opposed. You can still go ahead and put your opinions in on them, right?
Yeah.
The number is 1-800-372-7181. And I've had a couple people comment say that they have called and they are answering.
They do.
So like you're good to go. Just make sure that you call that number and you oppose both of these bills.
And remember too that I know for sure that there is a way to get on the legislative Research Commission's website and post comments somehow on these bills. I just haven't done it in a while. I learned it in law school. It exists. The legislator's website has a way for you to post a comment on a proposed law. It is there.
Why don't you find that link and put it on both of our live streams, Dave?
I will. It's in the Legislative Research Commission's website, which is where most of us who Google law, that's where we find it.
Right. Well,
Yeah.
and the other thing too is when you do call, and the whole point of the legislative hotline is to give citizens the opportunity to input. You can call this number to register your opinion on any bill at any time, and they take calls, all during the day and sometimes into the evening hours. It just depends on, on how hot the bill is, literally, and how many people are interested in it. But they ask you who your legislators are. And you can also say, I want to send this to the entire committee, or I want to send this to the entire Senate or the House or whatever. You can tell them whoever you want your audience to be. And if it's a specific senator or a specific representative, you can do that as well. And just let them know. And they will ask you, what your opinion is. And these people who answer the phone are absolutely incredible. They're very professional. They take down your message and then they translate that to your representative. So, I've used this hotline many a time for various and sundry things that I've been advocating for and encouraging other people to advocate for. And I can give big props to the people who answer the phones at the Kentucky Legislative Hotline. They really do a good job, and they are an extraordinarily important part of the process of citizen involvement and participation in our government. So take advantage of it. Still there, Dave?
Yep.
Get a little flip?
All right. Let's get a little recap on both of the House bills. So Bill 479, it has passed committee, correct?
Right.
Yes, it's passed committee, and that means that it's now set up for a floor vote in the chambers. If it gets through the chambers, the next place is the governor, right? Then he might be able to veto it.
Okay. So there's still two options that it could get shut down, right?
Yep. If it passes the House, it passes, the House, and then it goes to the Senate. The Senate can kill it, or the Senate can pass it, and then it goes to the governor.
Right.
And then if the governor vetoes it, then I think it's similar to the U.S.
It can be overridden.
Yeah, it can be overridden by like 2/3 vote among both the chambers or something like that. So it's got a while to go. But if anybody wants to, stand up for their rights to speak, now's the time to do it. Because once it passes into law, it sends a big message. It just sends shockwaves through the communities of, don't do this, you're going to get a felony. And it's already a hassle to go to court on a misdemeanor, especially regarding protests.
Yeah. So HR 479 is going to give Attorney General the authority to prosecute, even if local authority decides not to prosecute. So the big fear here is that it could easily be misused to target protesters. So that's the big reason. It's given the AG a little bit too much authority potentially. So that's the big reason why we're making sure that everyone's trying to call in to express your interest in opposing this particular bill. Now, you said that Bill 164, it was pretty much just proposed. It hasn't really gotten anywhere quite yet, right?
No, it hasn't gotten anywhere yet, but it's almost far more dangerous than 479 in terms of speech and expression.
Right, because it's going to make it so that it's misdemeanor to basically just show up and protest at council meetings, right?
Yes.
It's also going to make it a felony to camp on public property.
Yes, if there is no sign inviting you to camp.
Right.
Yeah.
What else? There was one other one that was a big one.
Obstructing the highway is now a felony.
Right. Okay.
Yeah,
we were really, like, early in the process, there was a lot of confusion about that because we thought it was already a felony whenever everyone got hit with it in the noodle action, like you were talking about. But then we did research and found out. So yeah, like they're actually trying to make it a felony now.
Yeah, they're trying to if you disrupt a meeting, they're trying to make it so that you got to stay in jail for 12 hours. Well, let's say you're disrupting a meeting, but you're doing it constitutionally for protest, right? That amounts to a 12-hour restriction on your First Amendment rights. Like, even if it doesn't happen, still, like I've said all this time, is that it's still going to chill the speech of people. They're still going to be scared to express themselves.
Right.
Yeah, it's just a big old fear tactic here, trying to chill speech. That's what's going on.
Yeah.
And the problem isn't necessarily the I mean, there's reasons for this, right? But
Terrifying.
I mean, but we know what happened in the U.S. Capitol doesn't happen all the time. But we do know the BLM protest happens all the time.
On a completely unrelated note, and thank you for that, Dave. Thanks for that recap. I appreciate it. The JCPS school board is split on reopening classrooms. You remember that we've been talking about the fact that they're going to be taking a vote, and it's basically 3 undecided members are going to play a crucial role. And
they were voting on that tonight, weren't they?
This is going to be happening on Thursday. They're going to vote on Thursday.
Right.
But they're waiting to see the formal reopening recommendation, and they have not given any indication as to whether or not they're going to open. But this is going to be very interesting because I'm hearing conversations on NPR and several other networks about the nationwide concern is getting our kids back to school. And do you know that we are one of the few states where all we do backwards? We are one of the few states that has prioritized vaccinating teachers, which is the key to getting kids back into the classrooms. And I hear these other superintendents across the country saying, we've got a real problem. We can't get our kids back into school because our teachers aren't vaccinated. So, for all of the screw ups that we have, one of the things that I feel like we've really done right is we have gotten our teachers in Jefferson County particularly, and they're asking school systems across the state to do the same, to prioritize getting their teachers vaccinated so kids can return. Because with a 60% failure rate through NTI,
60%, and if I'm not mistaken, it's a very high percentage of that 60% are POC.
Wow.
And it's also an extraordinary number of kids who are being affected by negative mental health statuses. Mm-hmm. Because being at home, being isolated, not being with their friends, not having appropriate, teaching, all of which has created some very strong mental health stressors for kids. So getting kids back into school, in many cases is a priority that we would normally not embrace because of our political leanings. But in this particular case, having vaccinated our teachers in Jefferson County is enabling us to move more quickly toward the goal of getting kids back into the classroom. And it's going to be on a staggered basis, much smaller crowds, many fewer students in each classroom, et cetera.
And that's a great conversation that we should have like Friday after the presser, after
Absolutely.
They make the decision and announce, maybe you and I should do one just to kind of explain everything.
Yeah, I think it's a really good idea because it's going to come at us hot and heavy on Friday at 10 o'clock when we go to the COVID press conference that Jared and I like to go get our COVID test and then go and talk about COVID vaccinations. Mm-hmm. Every Friday. It's like a date. A date with the thing up your nose.
Yeah. But, I want to remind everyone once again, number is listed on my live stream.
Mine too.
1-800-372-7181. You can call to give your opinions on any type of legislator at any time. But today we are asking you to call and oppose HB 164 and HB 479. So make sure you call and, express your opinion because it is your right as an American.
And I have also posted. Yeah, I've also posted the summaries from legiscan.com of both bills on my live. So you're welcome to copy that over to yours too, Reinhardt.
Perfect.
And that way people have something to look at to give themselves a bit of a summary. So Dave Johnson, God bless you.
Yeah, thank you for having me. I'm going to post some links and writings and stuff on Riot Hard.
Good.
So they'll be there about this very stuff, these two videos. All right, and thank you for having me.
Hey, we always love seeing you, Dave.
All right. Take
care of yourself.
Everybody,
Bye, everybody.
Fight the power.
Bye, Jared.